Joey, how are you?
I'm so glad to see you. This is our third or fourth time having
Yeah.
a podcast style conversation.
Yes. And the 100th that no one else knows about, and which is great. So,
My grandma knows.
yes.
She watches the live streams from her nursing home.
Well, hi, Grandma.
Shout out to grandma.
Shout out, Grandma. I like
Yeah,
that.
she's here. So today we're going to talk about fundraising reinvented. Like you know anything about that?
Yeah, I don't. I guess.
Strategies for impact and balance, and would love to sort of tie in fundraising to events because you
Yeah,
have a lot of experience in that space.
it's my
Um,
favorite.
What's your, yeah, I mean, usually we have Sheldon Price, who is our moderator in charge here at Utopia Experience. And so I'm clicking all the buttons today on Restream. I have no idea what I'm doing. We're figuring it out by figuring it
Oh,
out.
yeah.
So if I click something wrong.
You know what's great about you just trying to figure out and click it and figure it out? That's literally every nonprofit leader and nonprofit fundraising person who's doing events is doing the exact same thing. So this is very necessary for you to go through this as well, because everyone who's the accidental fundraiser or the accidental event planner and the accidental solicitor of all things that happen to do in the fundraising world and events is exactly experiencing this. I'm just pushing buttons to see what works.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. So you are the founder of Do Good Better Consulting. You are an author of Fundraise Awesomer. I love your tagline. We were on a call yesterday talking to an organization and looking at ways that we could potentially collaborate on this opportunity. And you said, I help fundraisers suck less. Is that right? I help fundraisers suck less at fundraising.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I mean that with the biggest heart and the most endearing term, because we all suck at it. There's no Bachelor of Arts in annual giving. There's no like degree you get in college on how to do a fundraising event. We're all just learning as we go. And we all suck at it unless we ask for help, or we get somebody who's been doing it for 20 years and just say, hey, what are you seeing as trends? What are you seeing as part of this? And that's kind of our goal, is to help you. Like, listen, we're gonna suck at this because we're making it up as it goes along, but help you suck less. Let's get her after this thing.
So you always talk about, by the way, I want to give a shout out to Sheldon, who obviously, couldn't be here today, but thank you, Sheldon, so much for setting this up, for getting Patrick on our LinkedIn Live. So Sheldon and Lachlan on our team are in Arkansas.
Yep.
And then the rest of our team are on a flight to New Mexico, where our team's getting ready to produce the Nonprofit Storytellers Conference in New Mexico. So shout out to Nonprofit Storytellers. I don't know if you're going, if you're out there, you're watching the stream, comment, let us know if you're going to be there. I'd love to see you. I'll be doing a main stage session.
Yes.
I'm super grateful that our team is like, it's really cool. Like I'm here pressing the buttons and pressing all the dials and doing the knobs. It reminds me of my life just a couple of years ago, before Sheldon and Lachlan were on the team, and I was doing all the things that, I think we're all just trying to do on a daily basis to figure out our businesses. And as you said, fundraisers are doing that, perhaps more frequently than some of us are on the for-profit side, because fundraising is difficult. It's a challenge, and there's a big lift there. So coming back to, like more fundraising stuff specifically.
Yes.
You say, I wanted to pull this out because you use a phrase that we've always done it this way.
Mm-hmm.
And talk about how that phrase is the most dangerous phrase in fundraising.
Yeah.
What are some of the ways to break out of that mindset?
Right. Well, this happens a lot when you have done an event for a very long time. I think let's just talk event specific, right? Like if you've done an event for a very long time and everything is now, it's tradition, or it's that way we've always done it. So it's very difficult to get maybe folks who are the original creators of the event, or old guard board members, to go, well, we can't get rid of this because we've always had it that way. And you really box yourself into never expanding, never growing, never getting creative on what the actual audience wants, or what the guests want, or adjusting with the changes. And I'm not saying blow everything up and start all over, but I do feel like we get locked in at the nonprofit level, not sort of trying new things because we don't want to upset the apple cart of that entire phrase. So really the challenge is, what little things can we do to adjust, prove that it's interesting, prove that it works. We've got a ton of data that we just see every year specifically when it comes to events, on what's working and what momentum is going forward. And if you don't add those elements to it, I think you're going to be very far behind. And yeah.
I want to ask you about that. Finish the thought. I'm sorry. I just got excited.
That was it. They're going to be far behind, period. Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned the data. One of the questions I was asked a couple days ago, I did a webinar, and it was for nonprofit fundraisers specifically, and talking about how to improve their events, make their events better.
Right.
Someone asked the question, which events are the most impactful? Which events should we be doing? Do you have data around that? Like, is it a 5K? Is it a gala? Is it a mastermind? Is it, a wine? Like, what are the events that are having the most impact?
I'm going to give you a consultant answer, and then I'm going to give you the answer that I would give to everybody else for that event. So the answer to what's the best event, it depends. And it really depends on who your audience is and why you're doing the event. So I think a lot of nonprofits will try to see what are other people doing. So we need to do that same thing because it works, right? And I know a lot of people who are watching this either live or in replay have had a board member who said, I went to a gala last weekend and they raised $1 million. So we should do that exact same thing, and we'll just do the same thing and we'll raise $1 million. No, you won't. You don't have the audience. You don't have the story. You don't have the impact. You're the totally different organization in completely. So you have to really look on who you're trying to capture, and whether you're trying to get attention, or you're trying to gain new friends, or you're trying to raise money. Those are 3 separate events. And then when you want to do a fundraiser, what are you trying to raise for? So what you're raising for is totally different from everybody else. So if you're raising a small amount of money, and you don't need to raise a ton of amount of money, you can do different events, whether they're small around the table at someone's home kind of event, or maybe a golf tournament the first year. Never really makes $100,000. You make a little bit of money, and you get to have friends show up. You get to tell your story a little bit and play some golf, and then make a little bit of money. That might be perfect for you. What I think the element that is a trend that I see across every single event that we have done over the last year and a half, that has seen unbelievable growth of 25, 50, 100% is the fund a need. It's the moment of the event in which you pause, you tell your story, you make an ask, and everybody raises their hand or their paddle at a certain amount that gives directly to the cause. And organizations that are not implementing this are not raising as much money. Organizations who are really spending a lot of time building it and executing it well are raising a ton of money. In fact, they're raising the most amount of money during the event in that portion, and it's way more than sponsorship and ticket sales and everything else. So that's the element you need to have.
This is a part of the session that I'm giving at Nonprofit Storytellers next week. And I'm giving 11 different tips and tricks and things to consider incorporating into your events to make them better. Yeah. One of the things, tip number 6, is great videos. It's in front of me because I'm practicing anyone would before they step on a stage in front of a couple hundred, 500-700 people.
Sure.
So I just wanted to offer a couple of different tips and tricks as it relates to fund a need videos, because I think these might be helpful for someone watching.
Yeah.
And there are 4 questions that should be answered inside of your donor's head when they watch your fund a need video. The first question is, why should I give? The second question is, what does a donation provide for your recipients? Third is, how does my donation impact the community, the state, and the world? Mm-hmm. And the fourth question is, where exactly does the money go?
Yep.
And so notice in those questions, there's nothing in there about programs, because people don't care about the programs.
No.
They want to hear not about how you've added 6 more programs and now you're drowning because you're trying to be all these things, all these people, and you're drowning and please help us. They want to hear human interest stories and human impact stories.
Yep.
And so I think that part is really important. Any questions in there that you think that perhaps should be included, or things that we might have missed?
No, because that's a perfect amount of things that you need to answer for the video. Now, I think an addition to the video during that fund a need moment is having somebody who might either have been in the video or has a direct tie to whatever you're fundraising for, step out on stage and then be the face of what they just saw, to even connect even more human to human before you ask for that gift. So what you do and what you described is a really necessary part, this well done video that talks about and answers all of those questions. And it sets the table for someone to come on stage and say, this is what this thing or this program has done for me and my family or my community that you helped make happen. And our plan is to do more with it and to help more people or whatever the case may be with your help. And I'm here to testify and tell my story so that, and then you've got your MC that comes out or your auctioneer that comes out and says, that was the most powerful thing that we've ever seen. And now's the time where we get to pause and raise the most amount of money in the smallest amount of time. Here's our fund and need. And then you go through the entire thing.
Yes.
So it's matching that human moment. And this is what I love talking to you, because you get this, you're in this production, you've got this brilliant team, and your brain is brilliant coming up with these immersive things for videos and whatever it is. And at the same time, you so understand the one-on-one, personal, eyeball to eyeball, emotional connection between people that you display on video, but need that human connection that ties all of this together. Because when you've got both of those things, money comes at you all over the place. And now you just have to invite people to the table because they're already willing to give. It's just now they're even more vested in the success because they've got this audio, they've got this visual, they've got this human, and now they have options on how they can help and make a difference.
Yeah, it's so important.
It's
One of the best events I've ever been to, Patrick, was a retreat, a personal development retreat that was benefiting a charity in Ohio. And I read this book, The Miracle Morning.
Ooh.
And I won't go into the whole backstory of how I got this book, but I was like young in entrepreneurship, taking over my mom's company that was Utopia Entertainment, now Utopia Experience. And I was just trying to figure out business, like any entrepreneur, like what am I doing and how do I do all the things in marketing and sales and operations and scaling. And so someone recommended that book, read the book, started consuming lots of Hal Elrod content in the way of his podcast. And he's like, hey, there's this personal development retreat. It's benefiting a charity. It's me and all my friends that are starting businesses or successful in business. If you're out there and you're trying to figure out how to start a business or scale your business, this is the event for you. And it's benefiting a charity, so you feel good about it. Like, I'm going. They did this. The whole thing was like, it was yoga and mindfulness and green juices and great smoothies and connection exercises and amazing, just like purpose, right? All these people that were thinking like me, they acted like me, they did the miracle morning, like yoga and meditation and journaling every morning to like set your day off right. It was like, I was just in this space where I was supercharged. Mm-hmm. They went through the program. They did a fund to need for the charity that was, there as the benefactor. And after they got through all the levels, the 10,000 all the way down to the $500 level, they played they played the video of the little girl named Hannah. Mm-hmm. And it was just super raw and emotional. 150 of us in the room, not a dry eye. It's just, you feel for this little girl who only knows the four walls of the hospital, and she's there for hours a day getting her infusion treatments and her dialysis and all of the things. And it's just like, no 7-year-old little girl should have to go through that. So they go through the levels, and at the end of the last level, they invite us to write Hannah and her family a letter. I know you've heard this story. I've shared it on your podcast
so much.
And I still am emotionally touched and absolutely moved to my core at the thought of that letter that happened 8 years ago in my life. Mm-hmm. And they closed, after we wrote the letter, they closed the impact loop 3 months later by sending us a video of Hannah and her family reading our letters. This stranger, we were 150 strangers in a room writing her letters, and now we became members of her extended family. They're reading our letters, and they're like, in our letters, we put, words of love and endearment and encouragement and letting her know, hey, your wish is about to come true. And they sent us a video of, her family. Anyway, so point is, can we bring in elements just beyond going through sort of the different levels? Is there a way to connect the audience even more deeply to the meaning behind your work and the impact that your donors are creating?
I think you have to now. Because again, everyone is going to have a fund in need at some point. And so you're going to have some sort of thing that you do differently than everybody else, whether it's a text message call to action, whether it is, lean over to somebody else who's sitting at your table and talk a little bit about what you're going to do next, or where you're going to share this, or providing them after the event with something that they get to take away and give to somebody else. But what that reminds me of too, and I love that story. I'll listen to that every time we talk. Every time we meet or have any other sort of business thing, I will listen to that story all the time because it's great. But it also says, when people are thinking about if I'm going to do an event or are events important to my organization, And again, from a scaling size scope, it doesn't really matter. But it's the only place and the only time where you can like legally lock somebody in a room and not make them come out. And you almost you can force them to like, uh, the Clockwork Orange style for like a video thing. And they're all, but the idea of they're now a collective of human beings that have experienced something together, which is really the difference between a lot of other fundraising venues. So if you had something where what I love most about it, you've got this really wonderful suggestion and an occasion where people will stand up and be recognized as the first time person who's ever been to this event, and everybody gives them a round of applause. To me, I've never stopped thinking about that. For like, this is years ago that you and I talked about this too, where you stand up and recognize a first time attendee at the event, and that they feel as if they now have been seen and heard. And so really, if you're an event or if you're a nonprofit doing an event, how do you, and this is the question I think you should ask your planning committee, you should ask your production team partners, like right here, you should ask them, how do we make our guests seen and felt and heard during the most important time of this sort of event itself? I told the story yesterday with you and I together too, is that if you go to Washington, D.C. and you go to the Holocaust Museum, you get a card before you walk in the door, and then you experience this unbelievable, really horrific and just a weirdly beautiful experience to like, now I am in somebody's shoes who went through a concentration camp. And at the end, you get to turn over your card essentially and say whether you lived or died out of it. And that is one of those haunting moments that will be with me forever. But how do you have one of those moments where you give somebody something during the event and that they walk away with it, and then here's what you did for a person? Right. So every time somebody maybe raises their hand during a fund in need, you have a volunteer run over to them and hand them something, whether it's a personal thank you note from a child that you're representing, or a flower or a carnation that represents something, or a color or whatever that they have and they get to hold. So now they're holding something as they're watching something, as they've stood for something, as they've raised their hand for something, as they've given something. It's this holistic experience piece that really you can have your imagination run wild. And almost circling back to our original point is that is not the way you have always done it before. And that is why I think organizations that think differently and outside of the box are going to have people return. They're going to have people passionate about it. They're going to say, I cannot wait till what they do next year that has to do with this. Yeah. And that, my friends, is what you should do to reimagine your event itself.
What else beyond the fund and need should organizers on, by the way, just for anyone who's tuning in, you can probably tell by the name, I mean, we're talking about fundraising events today specifically.
Yeah.
So we do lots of events. Fundraising events are those that are super close to our hearts because they're out there, amazing fundraisers making a difference in our communities. That's not to say our for-profit clients are not doing that, but love to talk about our charity partners.
Yeah.
So what else should our charity organizations be thinking about beyond the fund and need?
I am obsessed with the idea of first impressions at an event. So you know that everyone here who's listening and seeing this, you've been to an event, you go to the registration table, you get your booklet, you get your card, and then you walk into the ballroom or you walk into the thing, right? Why don't we have our leadership, our board members, our best volunteers, who are the most personable human beings in our arsenal of humans that we work with, given a donor or an attendee dossier, and they're given 5 or 6 names that they are responsible for personally welcoming and leading them through to either where they sit, to give them a lay of the land, to thank them profusely for showing up, knowing a little bit about their background and maybe the history of how many times they've been to the event. Imagine what it feels like to be seen even before you go to the registration desk and say, oh my God, Joey, I have been so waiting to say hi to you and say thank you for coming since we saw you purchased a ticket. My name is Patrick. I'm a board member with the organization, and I'd love to just kind of take you through what we've got new this year and where your seat is. And let me just take you. And the whole time you've got your arm around them or you're showing them this thing, and they now feel 100% differently
So
than
good.
when they did just a cold, here's your book, go find your seat, enjoy your meatballs, and we'll see you at the event. Like,
You would think that this is like so obvious, but it's not. And like,
it's not.
just,
No.
it's just a little thing that you could
Yeah.
simply implement into your events. Like I went to a gala a couple months ago, and as you know, as a parent, a fellow
Yep.
parent, we have, an almost 2-year-old daughter. Something happened with the babysitter. She couldn't come. I still wanted to go support the charity. My wife stayed home with Sage. I went to support the charity. I walked into an event with 700 strangers. I don't know a soul in the room. It's a new community.
Yep.
I'm standing in line for registration. Mistake number one is they had registration alphabetically categorized, but I couldn't see that from the back of the line. So I get to the front of the line and they're like, oh, you're in the wrong line. You need to go that way. I'm like, cool. So I have to go to the back of the line again, stand in line again, get to the front. I get my paddle, in my booklet. And I'm walking around the cocktail hour space trying to bump into someone else who looked as like aimlessly and hopelessly lost and out of place as I was, and having surface level conversations. There was like no ambassador to your point to like welcome me or greet me, make me feel a part of the community. We get to the tables. There's no like, hey, turn to your neighbor and let them know why you're here. There was none of that. There was no like conversation starters. They went into the program. The auctioneer auctioneered, fund need. And then they're like, cool, thanks for coming. Have a great night.
Yeah.
In contrast, I think of the front row event that I talked about earlier, where we cried together, we wrote letters to Hannah together, and we raised hundreds of thousands of dollars in that room together beyond making Hannah's wish come true, right? Like we made enough to where we could make another dozen wishes come true. So the organization broke us up in small pods. They're like, hey, if you want to help co-create the future of our organization, if you want to work on sales, go in that corner. If you want to work on marketing, go in that corner. Operations, go in this corner. Strategic partnerships, go in that. Like, think about that and how supercharged I was as a community member getting to co-create the future of the nonprofit organization, in contrast of what I just described, where I probably won't go back to that other event.
Yeah. Because it was hyper personalized.
Yeah.
We talk about this a lot, right? So like if you're there for the vanity numbers, you have 700 people in the room that you don't really care about, and it makes you feel good because you got 700 people there. Great. Of all the 700 people, who are going to be your champions and talk about it the day after? Not a lot, right? Because it was just an event for them. It was just something they had to do. They were a banker and the bank sponsored it, and they're a butt in a seat, and they're drinking your booze and they're eating your food, and they have no connection whatsoever. You know those people, right? So what if you rethink how people think about your event and your organization, and how do you hyper personalize all of these things there? How? You have to think about it that way. And if you don't, I think you're missing out on people who want to come back, and you're missing a great opportunity that people will then market for you. I say this a lot too. I've probably said a billion times, but third-party endorsement is exponentially more important than first-party solicitation.
Social proof.
It's all of it.
Yeah.
So you can tell the world your event is awesome, and everyone's like, yeah, well, of course your event is awesome. You're doing the event. But you and I going to an event and us talking nonstop about it, go, you're not going to freaking believe what they did here. Like, that has so much more weight in the community. Like, I can't even imagine what they're going to do next year. That's the important reason. And the only way that they're going to do that is if they feel hyper connected to the hyper personalized piece there.
Patrick, we just did this at an event last week. I wanted to bring this up because this is something y'all can do, and it doesn't cost a whole lot to do something like this. We did a testimonial booth. We set up a camera, a microphone just like this, and the light that's in front of me. And we had people come in, and there was a spinning wheel, and made it fun and interactive. And they hit a button, and the wheel would spin, and a question would populate, and they'd answer that question. And one of the questions was, what would you say to someone who's never attended before? Why should they attend? And it was all of the donors and the stakeholders and the partners and the association members selling the organization on behalf of the organization. Now, what are we going to do with that? We're going to chop it all up into different sound bites and send it back to the organizers and help them promote the future events, right? So could you do something like that at your event?
Yeah, you
use technology to your benefit. To your point, Patrick, because this is so important, you need data, but how do you make decisions if you don't have, data to inform those decisions? And this is a way for you to not only get data on your most important relationships, because they're telling you all the things they love about your event, or maybe they want to see improved. But you're creating a space where, there's tech and people get to do something interactive and it's fun and it's immersive, and, there's a crowd gathering around. So
to stack on top of that, Joey, listen, so, okay. So if you are doing that, let's just say you're doing this at an event. Everyone should do this, by the way. That is brilliant. And again, it doesn't cost you anything. What if, in addition to all of those things, your board chair or a handful of board members get in front of that and go, hey, so-and-so sponsor, I just wanted to let you know that we're having an absolute blast and we couldn't have done this without you. And here's a series of people who are having a really good time. I just want to show you this. I just want to pop in and just say hi. It's live from the event. I can't stop thinking about you and your blah, blah, blah. And then you email them that afterwards.
So good.
You want to hyper-personalize a thank you note. Yes, people are going to read the handwritten thank you notes, but they're also going to open up a video that someone emails to them like that. This is why we could talk for 9 hours. We need like a LinkedIn Live marathon. If we ever did like a telethon, but it was for fundraisers and we just talked about ideas the entire time, I feel like this would be a thing that you and I could do. I'm just saying, right out of the gate.
I love it, man. I love spending time with you. I really do. I mean, I learn something new every single time I'm in the same room as you.
Ditto here.
So let's talk about post-event follow-up, your favorite.
Yep.
How do we use the event to inform a follow-up strategy?
Right. I think so. I have liked this. If you kind of need to wrap your head around how much time am I going to need and what do I say in a time frame, I like this. It's super easy. 30, 60, 90, right? You always probably have a 30, 60, 90 plan when you're onboarding, 30, 60, 90 your way after an event. So within the first 30 days, you're going to want to tell everybody how we did, what the impact was, celebrate, appreciate, get it within 30 days. You're going to have to do that. That's the window of people like remembering they actually came to the event. You're going to get the next 30 days. What did you do with the money already? Like, what has the impact been? So you're not making an ask. You're just reminding them that they had a great time at the event. You reminded them that they raised a whole bunch of money and already your gifts have done this. And send everybody a note and say, everybody, that this, you should do this. And then the 30 days after that, right? You're in your 90-day span. What are you going to do next? And so tease out all of the things that you could do or you're imagining you can do and are allowed to do because of the support that this event made happen. Or you put an interview and then you update those things, right? So partition compartmentalize your brain, 30, 60, 90 days, immediate gratitude. And what was the number? Because people always ask what the number was, right? Get that out within 30 days. Next 30 days is reminding them of what your money is already doing in action. And if you just are hoarding money and not doing anything with it, that's a whole different conversation. But what did the money already do? And then what do you have planned for the future in the next 30 days? That's a great brain thing to just put in there.
That's awesome. I have a friend, his name's Jarrell Lovelace. Have you ever connected with Jarrell?
No, but I probably need to if you think he's cool.
He's super cool. So he's a nonprofit consultant. He's a recovering fundraiser himself. And now he just moved on. He's on the other side of the table.
Yep.
And so y'all, oh my gosh, you guys need to connect. He was telling me that as a nonprofit director of development, he used to walk around with a notebook. He's like, because I don't have an AI with me, my Fathom or my Otterbot with me at the event. And I have the best intentions, but I'm not going to remember every nuance of every conversation but I always jot it down. Like, Patrick loves his dog, Chase. And he would write down these little notes to inform his follow-up strategy.
Yep.
And if you want to use tech to do that, a way that you might, Patrick, we already talked about the testimonial booth and how that's a great opportunity to record videos and follow up with people afterwards by sending them the videos, whether they're individual donors or stakeholders or sponsors. One thing we did at an event a couple of weeks ago in Kansas City is we did a QR code on the screens, 2 questions, not 30, 2. First question was, what is your preferred method of communication? Multiple choice. Second question, how do you like to be thanked? Multiple choice. Tapping into the Gary Chapman's 5 love languages.
Yep.
I'm still a happily married man because I think I largely attribute a lot of that to the book that I read that, on love languages and how do you receive love and how do you give love? And so if you know that a board member or a donor likes quality time, maybe you send them to a restaurant so they can enjoy some time with their spouse as a gift or a thank you. And so how can we use tech in the space to help inform your follow-up strategy so that the 30, 60, 90 becomes easier for you because you know how people want to be communicated with?
Yep. And by the way, that question that you ask everybody in attendance should also be asked of your sponsors before the event happens, because you want to have a plan for your sponsors for sure, right? So a lot of people, and again, we're kind of reverse engineering some of the conversation, but before you even get into an event and you're soliciting sponsors for the event, ask them how they like to be thanked, how they like to be recognized. And it might not fit in the box of the gold, silver, platinum, thing that you have in a booklet. It might not be there, and that's okay. Because by the way, we're just making up sponsorships as we go along. There's no rules to it. You do whatever you want. And if you understand what they're looking for, and you know that maybe, I really like shout outs on social media, and it's maybe not part of the package that you sold them for the thing. Who cares? Send it anyway, and it proves that you're listening, and it's something that they wanted, and they told you about how great that was, and now you're the rock star because you listened and you jotted it down. So it's very similar. Like, ask everybody about how they like to be appreciated or what they want out of the event, and ask them, like, the question that I ask with clients before we even onboard is like, what's the most important thing that you want to accomplish on this call? Ask your sponsors and maybe some of your attendees, what's the most important thing about this event for you? And you now know that. And like, what you do with that information is so hyper personalized that no other organization in that entire community that you live in is going to be asking those questions. And what makes you different and what makes you attractive to people who want to go to an event that makes them feel good? That.
Standing out in a sea of sameness.
It totally is.
Everybody else is doing the same thing, so
Always.
Be different. I love it. Patrick, I just want to pose that same question to you. Did we accomplish everything that you wanted to accomplish during today's live stream before we end it?
And more.
Is there anything else you'd like to share?
No, except here's, if you're a nonprofit event planner and you're thinking about, like, what do we need to do to make our event a little bit more? Be curious. Ask your attendees questions on what they loved and what they would love to see. Ask your sponsors how they'd love to be appreciated and showcased before the event starts. And then really, if you think it kind of be cool, test it. It's okay to do new things and try some new things. Do not get rigid on the way we've always done it. It's totally fine.
Thank you so much, Patrick.
Thanks, my friends.
Thanks for being here.
This
is like a new thing that I mean, we're getting so much traction on these LinkedIn lives because it's like easily consumable content that is not in the way of like long form 2-3 hour podcast material. There's like quick hit, good, tactical strategies that people can incorporate right away into their organizations to make their events better, man. So thank you so much for being here and offering your knowledge and wisdom.
Thanks for letting me know that this now technology exists, and I will now not steal, but I will borrow and be influenced by it, because I'm going to use it now because it's great. So
that's amazing, man. We'll see you in a future episode.
Done. I love it. Thanks, my friend.
Thank you all. Thanks for tuning in. Comment down below. What was your favorite thing, favorite insight, favorite takeaway?